Hey everyone, welcome. In this video, we are going to be talking about shift registers. Now, the details of different aspects of shift registers, their operations, their applications will be covered in the upcoming videos. But for now, we will begin with an introduction to shift registers. Specifically, starting from an introduction to digital registers, we'll gradually move on to shift registers, and then we will discuss just an overview of the various modes of operation of shift registers. Again, the details of these modes will be discussed in the upcoming lectures. Let's first begin with registers. What are registers? So a register is basically a group of flip-flops where each flip-flop holds one bit of binary information, right? So you already know what flip-flops are, and you also know that each flip-flop is capable of holding one bit of binary information. A register is just a group of flip-flops all connected together, and a register, the storage capacity of a register is essentially however number of flip-flops it has. So if you're talking about an n-bit register, all you have to do is combine n separate flip-flops, and then each of these flip-flops will hold one bit of information. That means the entire register will hold n bit of information. So on top of flip-flops, a register may also contain additional combinational gates. So the flip-flops will hold the binary information within the register, whereas the gates will control when and how new information is transferred into the register. Right? So within a register, the flip-flops they serve as the storage units, and the gates serve as the control of how information flows in and out of these storage units. And that is what your register is. Now, visually, registers look something like this. On the inside, this is what they look like. So you can see we have multiple flip-flops. In this case, we have designed this register using D flip-flops, and you'll come to realize that D flip-flop is actually the most common choice when it comes to designing of registers. So what you can see here is we have four separate D flip-flops. That means this is a 4-bit register. We have input, we have output. This is where the data will go in, this is where the data will come out of, and we are going to discuss this serial in and serial out part in just a minute. This right here is just an illustration of what registers look like on the inside, right? So for now, what you have to understand is we have flip-flops, we have input and output out of these flip-flops, and additionally we have a clock. So this clock part is very important because this is what controls the flow of information, right? And this clock has to go to each and every individual flip-flop so that it works. And in this case, you can see this is similar arrangement as the one on top, apart from these gates. So we have additional gates. Like we said, registers contain flip-flops, and they can also contain additional gates. And this is what it looks like. Now the operation of these and the functionality of these will become clearer when we talk about shift registers in detail. This is just for you to get a basic idea of, just to familiarize you with what registers look like on the inside, right? Data goes in, data comes out. Uh, if you wanted to design a larger register, you would use more flip-flops, right? On the outside, registers look something like this. So I'm sure many of you might have seen chips that look like these. These are registers. These are the input-output pins on both sides. All right. Now, registers can be of many different types. Registers are your storage units within electronic circuits, and depending on what kind of information you want to store in them, you can have different types of registers. You can have memory address registers or memory buffer registers, input output address registers, input output buffer registers, and shift registers. So the focus of attention in this lesson is shift registers. This is what we're going to be talking about throughout the rest of this lecture. Shift register. Let's talk about shift registers now. A register capable of shifting its binary information in one or more directions is known as a shift register. So that much is clear from the name of the register itself, right? It shifts its information. It's basically a register that is capable of, on top of storing the information, it is capable of shifting it in one or more directions. and that is your shift register. So shift registers, like normal registers, like regular registers, they consist of a chain of flip-flops in cascade. So if you want to design a 4-bit shift register, you'll use 4 flip-flops. A chain of flip-flops in cascade with the output of one flip-flop connected to the input of the next, right? So they are connected in a chain format, and the output of one flip-flop is connected to the input of the next, and that is how the shifting will take place. So all flip-flops receive a common clock pulse that initiates the shift from one stage to the next, right? So the flip-flops will hold the binary information. Each of the flip-flops will hold one bit of binary information, and the shifting part is controlled with the clock. And here's an illustration of a basic 4-bit shift registers. Again, you can see we have used 4 D flip-flops. This is the input. The data will be shifted from left to right like so, and then it will come out on the other side, right? And then we have the clock, a common clock pulse that controls the flow of data. This is a common pulse that goes to all the flip-flops simultaneously. Now, we are going to be talking about the applications of shift registers before the end of this lecture, but right now I just want to give you a very basic idea of where these registers are used. And if you think about it, if you just realize that these registers are commonly found in devices like calculators and computers, then you will begin to see what the point of these registers is. If suppose you want to perform the addition of two numbers, right? So in a computer, the addition will be performed by converting the data into binary, right? The computer understands binary. So the idea is that addition of two numbers is essentially the addition of two 4-bit or 8-bit binary numbers. Suppose you want to you represent your data as 4-bit numbers, and then you have to add them. That is, you have to add them bit by bit. So each of the individual bits, if you just remember, if you just recall how you add binary numbers, then you'll know that you need some way to store individual bits so that they can be added. And so at the end, you can just combine your sum, and that will give you the final answer in a decimal format, in a human understandable format. But the computation will have to take place in a binary format, which means each of the bits need to be stored somewhere, and then each of the bits have to be shifted also, so that you can get the final sum. And that is where shift registers come in handy. So you can see that in calculators and computers, wherever you have to perform mathematical operations like addition, multiplication, division, subtraction, whatever, shift registers is what comes in handy. Alright, let's move on now and talk about the various modes of operation of shift registers. Specifically, we have 4 main kinds of shift registers when you're talking about the categorization based on modes of operation, right? So we have SISO, serial input, serial output. And from the name itself, you can kind of guess the data goes in serially, and the output of the register is also serial. So we have SISO shift registers. Then we have SIPO shift registers. Serial input, parallel output. So the input is serial, the output is parallel. Then we have PISO, input is parallel, output is serial. And finally we have PIPO. Both the input and the output to and from the register are parallel. We will talk about each of these categorizations of shift registers in the next video. But for this video, that's the end. So far we have discussed very briefly what registers are and what shift registers are, and then we took a look at an introduction to the various modes of operation of shift registers.